Okay, hi everyone. I'm going to introduce you to the basics of Tableau and where you can learn more, and how to play around with geospatial data. I'm hoping everyone has a copy of Tableau. As far as I know, everybody does. If you haven't gotten it yet, you don't want to try Tableau for free. You want to student or teacher and learn more. You get a free 1-year license this way. And as far as I know, everybody's got this set up. If you don't and you still are being told you have a 14-day trial, you basically just have to enter the key you get for the software from this process into your 14-day trial version, and then it'll start working. Okay, so if you launch Tableau, it looks like this, assuming you close any pop-up windows and things that come up. I find personally that loading data using this left toolbar is not very convenient. I usually just drag data straight in. So let's take a look at grabbing some data. We're on Google and look for GitHub coronavirus. Let's see. Yeah, the first link I get is the Johns Hopkins data repository. And this is really good data. We can clone or download, and I'm going to hit download zip. This is not tidy data, and this data isn't organized perfectly like we would want it to be. It starts out as a zip, so I'm going to double click that, and I believe it has a few folders. Alright, the interesting thing I want to play around here is the folder that ends in the word data. You can see we've got daily reports broken down by individual days and their report, and then we've got a time series. So the time series sounds great. I'm going to click on confirmed, and if we preview this, I hit the space bar. You'll see it's got a lot of information, so it's pretty useful. You could probably already think of ways you could filter this using dplyr in R. The problem is if you look at the dates up top, they are not in a tidy format. This is one variable, but it's spread over however many columns that is. So in R, the first thing we'd want to do is unite all of these columns into one, and since they're a time series, that would get pretty complicated, I would think. Certainly doable, but that's what I mean when I say this is not tidy data. That's the biggest problem with it. Okay, so that was our preview. What would happen if we just tried to take this data and dragged it straight into Tableau? Well, at least on the Mac, you'll see you get this little plus icon. And when I drag it in, we can see the data. Okay. Nothing surprising there. You can see the blanks that were in the province and state column have been replaced with italicized null. That's fine. So the primary way that Tableau works is through worksheets. You'll see at the top this just says it's a book, which just means data. Down here at the bottom left, you'll see sheet 1, and then there's this little plus that says new worksheet. That's what I want. I'm going to click new worksheet. And so on the left-hand side, you'll see this data tab that indicates the data we loaded, and then these are all the different variables we have. You'll see the variables in Tableau are broken into two sections here, dimensions and measures. So dimensions is referring to, in this case, geospatial information. Let me show you what I mean. I'm going to click on country region. I'm going to drag it into this blank area. So that's pretty cool, huh? If you hover over any one of these, it's just going to tell you the name of the country. That's not useful. But if I now go down to the measures, I'm going to go to the most recent date. It looks like it's this one. It's the last one listed, 3/9/20. But you'll see that the formatting for this date is poorly done. So they don't actually go in order. 3/19 is our last date. So I'm going to take this and drag it to the same map and let go. And you'll see things change. So now we're using the country/region layer to create this map essentially, and we're using this number here, or I'm sorry, 31920, number of cases. And you can see it's interactive, so if I hover over China, it tells me how many they have. We go over to Italy. So that's pretty cool. This is an interactive visualization. We could, in theory, export this and put it in a report. Let's talk a little bit more about what we can do with this. I want to change the color to red because, you know, it's a virus. I'm going to lower the opacity so it's easier to see the labels underneath. That might be too low, but whatever. We can add borders and halos and things like that. I'm just kind of messing around here. If we adjust this size, what it's going to do is change the size relative to the number here, so that's a little bit more dynamic. And if we go to label, I find that you can sometimes do some cool things. Like I'm going to click on show mark labels, and you see we get those numbers. Then under alignment, I'm going to change the alignment. Let's see. I'm going to click, yeah, I click this middle vertical alignment. That seemed to work pretty well. So it's not perfect. It works really well for China. Doesn't really work for Spain, but as long as you hover over it, it works great. So anyways, that's an option. You could always turn it on or off. Kind of depends on if this is going to be interactive or not, right? If we exported this as a JPEG, then we'd probably want those numbers on there. So that's the easiest way to work with geospatial data in Tableau. Please note that in order to be able to do this, we need a section of data that defines the dimensions. And in this case, it's just country or region or province and state. And again, if you look at the actual data, I'm going to click on our data if I can. Let's see, data source. I'll go down to the bottom left. You'll see country and region are just listed as text. So what Tableau is able to do is convert that into a map of the world. It can do the same thing with provinces. If we had only loaded American data and it had a states column, it would do it for states. Now it's possible you'd bring it in and there'd be abbreviations for states or something that would cause Tableau will be fine with that, but in certain instances it could be tricky to get it to do what you want, so you'd maybe want to clean your data ahead of time. You could use anything for that. You could use Excel if you're comfortable in it. You could certainly use R. So I want to take the opportunity to show you a few other things that we could play around with in terms of importing geospatial data and just trying to get it to do something, show us a map. I'm at the Chapel Hill Open Data portal, so if you just Google Chapel Hill Open Data, it'll come up. I'm going to search for bike. Okay, you may hear my children screaming in the background. That is normal. They are happy. Anyways, I'm going too fast. I'm not saying what I'm doing. So I searched for bike. Sorry, they're very distracting. And I found bike map lanes. Bike map lines. Pardon me. So you might remember I showed you all a project when I introduced this class, showing you bike maps in Chapel Hill and then bike accidents. So I'm not going to go that far with this, but I did want to show you. If we take these bike map lines, if I click on export, we've got an option here for geo-JSON. And anytime you can find a data set that includes a geo-JSON format, that means you can make a map for it very easily in either R or Tableau. I'm going to click on whole data set here, and that's going to download that entire geo-JSON. So Chapel Hill is, you know, a small municipality, and it has a small collection of data. And the reason we're downloading bike lanes is a lot of this stuff does not have geo-JSON in it. So for instance, here's points of interest. If we go to export, it does have GeoJSON, so that's nice. I just assumed it wouldn't. Some other things probably wouldn't, and then we'd kind of be out of luck. The idea here with these open data portals is you can find 2 or more data sets and download them. And then you can show them together on a map. All right, so here's my bike map lines. Okay, go through this process again. So I'm going to create a new sheet. You'll see it just tabs out. So here's the last one we made. Here's this new one. And again, I'm going to take this data and just drag it over. I guess I'll drag it up here, or I'll try to. Let's see. Yeah, I find it can kind of drag it anywhere into Tableau, and it'll take over this this book view. So now we can see all the data that's in this Chapel Hill bike map lines. I'm going to go to sheet 3, and I've got Chapel Hill bike map lines active. You can see we still got our COVID-19 data. I'm going to click on our Chapel Hill data and drag geometry over. So now you can see the bike lanes. You can also see an underlay of a map of North Carolina, which is kind of cool. Well, I won't zoom out anymore. It's getting kind of pointless. But, you know, now we're getting some pretty interesting stuff. This is all set to be automatic, right? It's just kind of figuring out what we want. If a map didn't show up for you, you could just click on this map icon up here, and that would give you this option. You could tab over to the world, and it'll just zoom way out to show you one dot in North Carolina. I'll switch back. So again, that's how easy it is to work with GeoJSON data. The tricky thing would be if we brought in data that wasn't directly compatible with this, that did not have GeoJSON data. So for instance, it had latitude and longitude points. We could get those two to communicate, but in Tableau or in R, we'd have to do a little bit of conversion to get those two data sets to talk to each other. If we had data that had no location information on it, we can't really do anything with it. I left one option out. I guess if there is data that had street addresses, we could try to convert that. Converting street addresses to latitude and longitude is called reverse geocoding. Or maybe that's just geocoding, actually. I get the two reversed in my mind, I guess. We don't have to worry about that. It can be a tedious task. So hopefully y'all managed to get bike lanes in here. Again, that's not the most exciting data portal. Again, I only have a couple of things in there, so I wanted to show you a few other ones. In my experience, or at least over the last year or so, I found Philadelphia's Open Data Portal to be outstanding. Open Data Philly it's called, but again, you can just Google Philly Open Data, you'd find it. I'm going to do a search for shootings. And shooting victims is the first result that comes up. You can see it has a GeoJSON tab, so I'm going to click on this. The format of every open data portal is pretty different, which is unfortunate, but I'm going to scroll down on this page and you'll see there are all these different formats, and here's the GeoJSON, and there has this Explore button. Well, I'm going to click Download. All right, and now we have that as well. So you can probably guess what I'm going to do. I'm going to create a new sheet in Tableau. I'm going to take shootings, drag it over. We'll see it as data, but now I'm going to click on our new sheet 4. And for shootings, I'm going to take geometry and drag it over. And that's a lot of shootings, huh? Now, if I click on any one of these, it's going to open this little pop-up. And I have to click on that and then click on full data to actually see all the other data in here, which is the interesting stuff. So the data's all there, it's just not easy to interact with. Let's say we wanted to look at it differently. Like, let's say we want to see the race of these shootings. I'm going to click on race over here on the left in our dimensions and drag it over to our map and let go. And you can see it's automatically going to color code here. We can hover over and see the different results. So that's kind of interesting. Again, this is interactive, so we can zoom in. If you know Philly, you can recognize the land underneath. We can probably adjust that map underneath, but I don't want to get too far into that. So can we do this in R? Well, yes, we could. It's certainly doable. So let me switch gears here and just show you how we would do this in R, and hopefully this will work well. We're going to have to install some packages, of course. First one I'm going to install is SF, which stands for Spatial Features. I'm going to grab Map View, Leaflet, there's this one called GeoJSON SF. So I'm going to install all those and then library them. I've actually already loaded all these, so I'm just listing them out for y'all. Okay, after all that fun stuff, we want to read the Philly data that we read in, or we could call this shootings or whatever. I'm just going to call mine Philly. So how are we going to read this in? Well, it's geo-JSON. So that last library we load is going to let us do it. We do geo-JSON underscore SF and then parentheses quotes, and we can type in the path and file name. So this is always a little tricky. I wanted to remind you, if you put in the tilde, that's starting at your home folder. I'm going to do tilde slash downloads slash shoot, I believe it's shootings dot geo-JSON. Well, let's see. Lucky. Okay, so if I try to do like view Philly, oops, we can take a look at it just as data, and you'll see usually the last column is called geometry, and it has this kind of confusing thing. It has a C and then a collection of points as your latitude and longitude, basically. And that is what R and Tableau are able to read in order to show your map. So I just want to start by saying Leaflet is the best geospatial visualization package for R, but it's a little complicated. So if I say Leaflet Philly, I just get a blank map. So I have to manually add tiles. So let me run that. And you can see it's, it's added the tiles. It's a little zoomed out. Before we go to add tiles, let me just instead here set view. And I'm going to enter some longitude. I have already looked these up. They're pretty rough, but they'll work. So long equals -75, lat equals 40, and then zoom equals 9. And then I'm going to pipe that to add tiles. So now we've got a map of Philadelphia. So what could we do with that? Well, that's where it gets a little complicated, but we could import more data, such as the shootings, and we could overlay it here and then play around with it. But as I mentioned, Leaflet is pretty tricky, and we'd have to spend a few days practicing that. And I'm not going to cover that right now. So what I want to show you instead is map view, which I believe is dependent on Leaflet. It uses Leaflet's kind of render engine. I don't know if that's the right term. But if I say map view Philly, this may pop out in a browser. Yeah, it looks like it's going to. It may not on yours. It just kind of depends on your graphics capabilities. But here's the Leaflet of that Philly. All I did is import the shootings data, right? And said map view it. So it's got these unfortunate overlays, which is just like the incident number. Of course, all this is customizable, but if you click on one, there's all the data. This is also customizable, where you can control which of these variables shows and which doesn't. And of course, you could color code this and do basically everything we were talking about earlier. It's also pretty easy to add other data sources. They'd show up over here, and they're interactive and all that kind of stuff. So these are the background options that you have. So there's the one that's similar to what we saw in Leaflet. You'll see it's basically the same. So map view is fun. So to be clear, anything we do in Tableau, we can also do in R. So how do we do it in Tableau? Well, we don't have to program it, so it's a little easier. As I mentioned in the past, geospatial mapping in R can be really processor intensive, and I've had a lot of students in the past run into difficulties with it, crashing their RStudio or their computer or whatever. So this just makes it a lot easier. Now I realize this is just a really brief overview of what we can do with Tableau and what geo-JSON is, or geospatial data is in general. So let me try to point y'all to some resources. First of all, Tableau offers its own, I guess we call it, well, they call it a tutorial. And it's excellent. It's very, very basic. They don't make any assumptions about what you know and don't know. So this is straight from Tableau Help, is how I found this. And again, if you walk through it, I mean, the first couple of steps are similar to what we just did, but very helpful overview of the whole program. I also wanted to show you, although I don't think I have it open anymore. Oh, maybe it's over here. Oh, no, that's not it. Let me go to LinkedIn Learning. They have a Tableau class. That's pretty cool. Let's see if I'm signed in. Yeah, it looks like it. Okay, if we search for Tableau, I don't know what that noise was. I must have hit a weird shortcut. Tableau Essential Training is what we want. You can see this is recently updated. It's only about 6 months old. This is the same version of Tableau that we're using. And it starts in a pretty straightforward way. Download Tableau. All right. But here's where it starts getting useful. Tableau file types, and then really chapter 2. So if you want to take a look at that, I think that would be helpful. I'm also going to take a look at it. Remember, I'm pretty new to Tableau as well. We're going to try to work with Tableau and R kind of in unison and back and forth. Our next project is a geospatial project. So our aim is to find some sort of data that has a geospatial component and have at least one map in our project. Beyond that, our project can explore all kinds of different stuff, but obviously we can't use text analysis for this really. Well, I don't know, maybe you could, but that's not really what we're looking for. So I'll show you a bunch of examples as usual, and I want you to start thinking about the kind of things you can do. As usual, contact me if you have any trouble with anything I did in our little video walkthrough here today, or in general. I'll see you in the next video.